Greetings, Stalkers, and welcome back to the Grymm Mansion. I am your abominable host, Weird Eldritch. I'm joined tonight and all nights
by Abomination. You kind of stole a little bit of my. I can't use that same one. That doesn't work.
Well, you can be weird tonight. I'm okay with that.
I'm just Abomination tonight.
Tonight, we have something that we weren't expecting to see again anytime soon.
I feel like this is going to be our most nostalgia-inducing episode in a long time, because I think this touches our cold black hearts quite deeply. I think.
Agreed.
Because it is, if not our first episode, it's a remake of one of our first episodes ever.
Indeed, yeah.
That we lost. Actually, we lost all those
With
recordings.
The wipe cylinders.
From 100 years ago at this point.
Over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's cut to the chase and talk about NOSFERATU. Our candles are lit, the circles have been closed, and the words of power have been recited. Let us begin tonight's gathering. Much like in its 2020 counterpart. Well,
1920.
What did I say? 1922 will be counterpart. Well, we have some differences, but some things also remain the same. For example, we are in Wissau, correct? A fictional town in Germany. Wisberg, yes, Wisberg.
Which might be a reference to a lot of cities, which sound similar.
Instead of actually opening in the town of Wisberg, we begin the movie with an invocation, much like we do here at the Grymm Mansion. The character of Helen is asking the heavens or any celestial sphere for something to come to her, like a spirit of comfort. But regretfully for her, what hears her is not that. In fact, quite the opposite.
There is a voice, a very dark and sinister voice, which answers her call. And it says, "You are not of mankind." And it asks the question, "Shall you be one with me ever eternally?"
Yeah, she does swear, right? She starts moaning, and then we have the first jump scare of the movie, like not even 3 minutes in.
There's like 3 or 4 in this entire movie. It's like one of the only ones.
While she's having this epileptic attack, the movie cuts to some years later, to a morning in our town of Wisberg, once again, where things start getting a little bit familiar for us. Thomas Hutter is late for work, and Ellen is begging him to stay. The honeymoon was too short, but no, I must leave to work. I'm already late once again. And she's seen speaking alone.
Essentially, she kind of mentions, her nightmares to basically start it again. She's just really worried, and it's something that's quite traumatic to her.
So once he gets to Herr Knock's office, all the other associates are in a somber mood, telling him he's late, but Herr Knock is in a completely different mood, actually. He seems to be that Thomas is late. He calls it Providence because he still has some documents that he needed to go over, and proceeds to compliment his wife to a degree that shows that he's obsessed with her. Anyway, it'll become much apparent later. So he tells him...
It's important to mention that Thomas Hutter, and Knock, they work in this real estate agency business.
Just touching on what you say, he tells him that he needs to meet with the Count to sell a house. He must really do it now, and he will travel to the count's location to sign the documents. They talk about how the house in question, Grunewald Manor, seems to be just ruins, but, the count insisted. Anyway, Thomas is to travel to a remote place east of Bohemia, behind the Carpathian Alps, that we know
Well, not
is...
actually probably before the Carpathians. It's Transylvania. That's what. But yeah, he has to travel from wherever the hell Visberg is. Let's assume somewhere in modern Germany, probably, to Transylvania.
And when Knock mentions the count's name, Orlok, it starts to rain.
Yeah, so Thomas grabs some flowers. I guess they try to reference the original here. They're trying to make a... When he gives her the flowers, she's like, why did you kill these flowers? So it's kind of to show that...
She has a lot of empathy.
Yeah. Obviously, Ellen doesn't want him to go. She actually has kind of a bad...
I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, she feels like it's going to be a bad thing, and he's trying to just, reassure her, like, it will be fine. But, like, she can't be alone at their house. Like, they both agree that that's a bad idea. So they go to Frederick, the friend of Thomas. Yeah, the idea is that Ellen is to stay here. It's the same plot as in the first movie, in the original movie.
However, there is one big difference between those two scenes, in which Helen shares a dream that she had, in which she is marrying Death, and she actually feels happy about it. But this scares her to no end, I guess. Thomas then tells her that she shouldn't say these things out loud, and then takes her to Frederick because he's still going to go. Over at Frederick's, then they're having dinner and they're sharing drinks. It's not really relevant, I think. They're talking about how he's going to have his third child, a boy. Finally, he seems to be very happy about it. And I guess it's the setup now. They're a very happy family. He seems to be also very childlike and playing with the kids. They do mention, the children mention they see a monster under the bed and they're very scared.
I mean, children do come up with a lot of things, but it does seem kind of an interesting insistence from their part.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Kind of another ominous
foreshadow.
Yeah.
That night, while Thomas sleeps, Ellen makes a locket with her hair so Thomas can carry it. And while that's happening, we see
Knock naked inside of a circle of candles, a circle that he drew on the floor of his own office, apparently. And he's
with a fountain pen. With a fountain pen, he's taking his own blood out.
How do I describe it? He's radiating happiness and laughing, and this contract that he got is like the best thing that has happened to him. It's what it looks like.
And so we skip a little bit of Thomas's travel ahead to when he gets to Romania and finds a village.
Actually, I don't think it's Romania because at this point in time, it will be Hungary probably.
Well, he gets to Transylvania, I guess, and he finds a group of an inn, I guess. They seem very happy to see a foreigner come to their land, and they're singing and dancing.
They're mocking him. They're mocking him. Really, it's
in the end, yes. Once their leader starts laughing at him, yeah. And then the innkeeper comes to shoo them away and also make some offhand racist remarks.
Mm-hmm. Then he offers like double the pay and he accepts to take him in for the night. There's this old lady which comes to him begging him to not go to Orlok Castle.
Yeah, because he mentioned it and scared the hell out of everyone.
They're very, very, very superstitious about that. It's like, just don't go.
She does mention something about not standing in his shadow, which is important later.
Yes. All of this is foreshadowing, and we know because we watched the original movie. But even if we didn't, like, it's pretty obvious too.
Mm-hmm.
He sleeps for the night. He wakes up. It's unsure if this is a dream, although I think it is supposed to be a dream, in which he sees like this parade. The village people are the villagers are taking this naked woman on top of a horse to a grave site.
They're taking a virgin on top of a white stallion. I think there's some symbology there.
Yes. And they find this grave. There's this ominous feeling that goes across them when they're face to face, and they open the grave. There's this one guy has it's like wearing this, I guess, hunter clothes. How do I explain it? And he just stabs the corpse inside. And
With an iron spike. Yeah, it starts shooting out, gushing out blood, and then Thomas comes from behind the wood just saying, no, by the grace of God.
Because this is desecrating a tomb, technically, so he doesn't really understand what's going on. But, he wakes up, and when he wakes up, the village is completely empty. Even his horse is gone.
He even takes the charm off that Babushka gave him last night. But he does know it wasn't a dream, because his boots are muddy. So he decides to make the trek by foot up to Orlok Castle until nightfall, when he's already exhausted from all the climbing. And he comes up to a crossroad, interestingly, something that's also not in the original movie, I guess.
Yep.
But it's interesting that it happens like this. From the other end, he starts hearing hooves hit the floor, and a carriage stops in front of him, with seemingly no one riding it.
A dark chariot with dark horses, and no one riding it. Yes, and it just opens the
little door swings.
Yeah, the door just opens slowly, but on its own, and he, maybe in sort of like a magnetism kind of way, he enters, and he's almost like pulled into it.
Yeah, that's something interesting that we noticed.
This whole the visuals in this are like crazy, or like this weird surreal thing.
It seems like he's gliding towards it.
And then it has this weird transition in which like he's inside of the chariot, and then suddenly he opens his eyes and he's already like outside with his back turned towards the facade of the castle. It's like this, there's this weird kind of...
It feels like a fever dream.
Yeah. It's
He's
supernatural.
Even clutching
clearly.
his chest. Anyway, the person that opens the castle doors is none other than the Count, who seems to be upset at him because it's already past midnight. All his attendants have retired. Funnily enough, you never see any attendants in the entire movie, but sure.
Yeah.
And he has this big hearth with fire and lots of wood just burning in there.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that the whole mood of this castle, like, it doesn't look inhabited, you know? It's like he's living here, and this is supposed to be like a count who's like really important, you know? Yeah, you don't see anybody else, as you mentioned, and it's just like there's like no decoration, or like the decoration is all like full of dust and kind of crippled in some way. It's very strange. There's only the heart. There's no candles, nothing.
This is where the biggest shock of the movie comes. If you were expecting a Max Shrek cosplay, it's not what's happening here.
We got something quite different.
Yeah. Eggers decided to just look at the picture, the famous painting of Vlad Tepes, and say, this is what we're going with.
Yeah, he has a mustache now.
Yes,
that's it. And hair as well.
Yeah, and you don't see no teeth. There's it's just
no pointed teeth.
Yeah,
yes.
The fingers are still very long and curly. It took me a while. It took me a while.
We can discuss on what we think about
cool.
it later. Yeah,
they have some discussion about how he wants to go over the deed right now, and he wants the guy to obey what he's telling him.
Yeah, I like a detail. Sorry, of when Thomas mentions the village people and how they were like telling him to not come. Oh, sorry,
it's
the
okay,
villagers.
It's funny.
Villagers. YMCA. Orlok he's telling him to basically like disregard that these people have weird traditions, weird beliefs about these things, and they're very just let him be. And then when he insists, he's like, silence, like speak no more of it.
I actually thought you would mention the fact that he says that he longs to retire to a place where the people don't have that sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention that. But yes,
that to me was the coolest one.
That is important, yes.
While he's cutting bread, I think, Thomas slices his finger. And this is when the Count freaks out, like, be careful what you do. and tells him to come closer to the fireplace so he can tend to his wound.
So he can fix him.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this superposition with Ellen waking up from another nightmare or sleepwalking. Like basically she starts having these. It starts getting worse for her.
Yeah, while Thomas isn't there, she starts to freak out. So she does have a conversation with her friend at the beach about how she feels destiny calling to her because something is coming and she knows it. And Thomas wakes up the next day after his adventure with puncture marks on his chest. He wakes up actually next to the fireplace. He finds no attendants. He's exploring the castle a little bit, but nothing comes of it. The scene ends when he finds those holes in his chest.
Yep.
We cut to Orlok giving Thomas a contract signed, like written in some infernal language, which was to me a huge red flag as a real estate agent. Like, why would you sign
Yes.
anything if you're the one coming here to give papers to someone, you know?
Yeah. That is very weird. And I think I don't know if you mentioned it, but there's a scene in which, or maybe it's like right now, I don't remember.
The locket?
Yes,
Yes,
he mentions
it's during the contract signing, yeah.
because he mentions,
What a beautiful locket you have.
yeah, he mentions,
Did your wife get
grabs
it
the
for you?
lockets, and he's really fixated on this and really insisting that Thomas sign this contract. He offers him a lot of money, a quite large quantity of coins in exchange, and he ends up complying and writing his name under this weird ass contract written in this script that is not similar to anything that common, let's say, of languages.
What I wanted to mention is how you feel the tension, like the pressure on Thomas to sign the contract, as if he's falling to the awe that the aura that the vampire exudes, you know?
Clearly there's there's a force of attraction, kind of like a gravity pulling him to sign the contract.
And once the contract is signed, Orlok just picks it up, is refusing to answer any more questions. Thomas is like, I would like to take my leave right now if possible. And no, you don't look well. Please, you're staying. Just obey my command. Thomas like, sir, you have my locket.
Yep.
There's no cut to Ellen here, right? It's just straight to him waking up in a sweat, trying to leave the castle and finding Orlok's coffin. He finds the same seal that was used on the contract he signed last night on this stone coffin.
Yep.
That when he opens it, it's just filled with dirt, rats, and the body of Orlok.
Naked this time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, any amount of we can talk about it later. If he hadn't noticed all the red flags up to this point, this is, the final nail in the coffin, pardon my expression, that this guy, Orlok, is a vampire. And so he, remembering what the villagers did before, he grabs a conveniently placed pickaxe and he tries to stab Orlok in the chest. And fails. Orlok lifts himself as Thomas runs for his life.
At this point, there's no running away. He locks himself in the room. We see there's a very cool scene of the shadow of Orlok just showing up on the other side of the window, I guess, and with a flick of the hand commanding Thomas to open the door. And when the door opens, Orlok is on the other side of the door. So it's a mind of sorts with the powers that he has.
Mm-hmm.
He drains Thomas of some more blood while Helen is having these seizures that the doctors, Frederick has called the doctor, Dr. Sievers, to tend to her. And it seems that she has too much blood on her. It's a congestion of blood. He suggests that she sleeps in the corset to give him some more ether to put him under. And if things get tricky, he can always tie her to the bed.
Yeah, they're attempting, all the
good old medicine,
the common 19th century medicine, which we so are not a fan of here at the Grymm Mansion. We've experienced it, trust us. Yeah. Meanwhile, Thomas wakes up Right, because failed to mention that I guess Orlok has some power over beasts and animals, and we saw the rats already, but there he has these pair of black
I think
dogs,
it's 3 dogs actually.
2 or 3 dogs, which come in barking and trying to maybe eat Thomas alive. He only saves himself getting out of the window and then falling into the river. Quite brutal.
Ellen is severely distraught that she doesn't hear from Thomas because his letters appear to not reach him in any way, shape, or form. And Friedrich also mentions that Eric Knock is nowhere to be found, which comes into play in the scene right afterwards, in which a worker of the I don't want to call him asylum, but it's what it looks like. He found someone at the market killing sheep with his bare hands and eating them raw.
Let's say that Nock has started to he's letting go.
He
of his,
accepted the gifts of his master.
yes, and now he's just living his best life, eating raw animals. Yeah, and he's arrested and taken to jail. I mean, how else could I describe it?
Well, it wasn't supposed to be jail, but it is jail.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the delivery here. That he has some beautiful language that creates a very dramatic scenario in your head.
Oh yeah, this is the first. I believe this is the first. No, it's not the first mention of Nosferatu by name, but he does talk of his master. He explains to the doctor there. He says that he will punish all of them because they have hurt him, his loyal servant.
Mm-hmm.
And and other things that I didn't write down.
Yeah, but the way he describes him, like the word devourance, for example, and this entire, he eats a pigeon's head right in front of them, and he repeats the same words that Helen was using last night. He is coming.
Yep.
Later that night, when Helen is again having seizures and Sievers is called to Friedrich's manor. There's a lot of names. He starts describing that they both are sharing the same mania, and he mentions someone that could help, which is Von Franz.
Our boy Von Franz.
Von Franz is stand-in for someone that we here at the Grymm Mansion despise and will not mention, because I don't feel like ruining the carpet. It was just washed.
Washed by blood, you mean?
We cut to somewhere.
Cutting back to Thomas, who has been, last time we saw him, he was falling into a cold river. He is rescued by these nuns from a local church.
It's an Eastern Orthodox
Church, yes. And they do a ritual on him because they realize that there's something wrong with this guy. His skin is like gray, afflicted by something. And they essentially do kind of like a, I wouldn't say an exorcism, but they do a ritual that essentially cures him of whatever malediction he has on him. And he wakes up.
The problem is, as they start explaining to him what happened, and now he's under the influence of Orlok, they tell him that he still needs to stay, something that he can't do because he knows that Orlok is leaving.
He's coming. Yeah, he's going to.
Something that distresses the nuns, in a way, because he needs to. She says that he needs to sleep, rest in the dirt that he was in, the ground that he was put in. Whatever. Then we cut to the boat and how he's already traveling.
Yeah, it is true that Count Orlok needs to sleep in the dirt that he was buried in, so he's just going to carry the dirt with him. Modern problems require modern solutions, you know?
He's making Ellen dream of him while at the same time controlling the elements to hasten the boat. There's this image of Knock in the, I don't want to say electric chair because there was no electricity at the time, but it looks like one in the straitjacket and such. Mm-hmm. While Sieverts and Frederick...
restraining chair,
yes, well, thank you. I was missing the word restrained. While Sievers and Friedrich go to find Von Franz, who is in a trance and trying to essentially transmute sulfur to gold. What he means is he's searching for some for some higher truth in this case. He was meditating. He was meditating on some alchemical musings of something or other. I
I don't know
particularly
about you, but I love this guy.
well, considering who he is based on, I don't.
Yeah, I agree to
But
disagree. Yeah.
this distancing helped me remember that he and I, we and him, are not so different after all.
Yeah, it's just a matter of opinion, I guess. It's just a matter of philosophy about
Humanity.
the humanity, exactly.
This guy agrees to help them with Ellen, and he actually seems to have some foresight because he was drawn to Visberg years ago. He knew that something was gonna go down here, and he already knows what malady is afflicting Ellen before he even meets her.
Oh, immediately when he sees her, because she's been restrained to the bed, he notices that she's been put into essentially a coma. He immediately tells them to unrestrain her, like get her out of these ropes.
They have a little conversation about what she's feeling, and she goes on to tell him she's been feeling like this ever since she was a child. That her father usually would find her in the fields like she was some changeling girl, and I really like that wording, as if the it's grabbing local folklore that kids would be kidnapped and then misbehave. Oh, that's not my child. That's Faye, essentially.
Yeah.
And how these things later in her life became more somber, how she knew when people were going to die. And she asked him a question that, like, it's still stuck with me. Like, does evil come within us, or does it come from beyond? She seems to be very insightful about whatever's going on with her predicament.
Yeah, they instantly bond over this. And Von Franz, he basically knows, like, yeah, this is clearly something supernatural, and I'm gonna do some experiments. I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna look into this, and he puts her in sort of a trance.
No, it's not. It's not him. She's in a trance every night.
True. He doesn't do. Yeah, he doesn't do anything. He just lets her be like that. Yeah, he talks to her in this trance,
commands her, the spirit that's possessing her, to obey with I think he has a ring that's essentially like a seal of Solomon,
something like that. Yeah,
and he gets to speak with the demon, I guess, or whatever's possessing.
It's crazy. We see the her voice change, her like contorting. She like at some point she starts levitating, I think, over the bed.
No, she does arch her back really hard.
Yeah. Exorcism style things going on.
And this is when Franz realizes that he's dealing with something that's way over his pay grade, and he must return to his studies. That's actually when he mentions that thing you said: no more ether, and if she must ravage, she will.
Yeah.
I know we mentioned the boat because Orlok is traveling by boat, and this boat is being ridden with plague somehow. Everybody seems to be infected. And it's getting critical to the point that the crew decides to do something about it. They know that that box that they're carrying, that's the thing that's cursing them. One of the crewmates goes down there, it opens it, and just find rats inside.
And then he's violently killed by Orlok,
who was already standing behind them.
Yeah.
This actually is really when he's really close to Visberg, because that same night, Canuck flees the asylum by killing one of the orderlies.
Yep.
And he's screaming about how the blood is the life, something that is from the original one, and I liked very much that it was still mentioned here. Yep. And yeah, the boat does crash into the docks, and at the same time that Canuck is screaming, he is here, Ellen wakes up and says he is here, and opens the door for Thomas.
I don't know if he stole a horse. He just took a horse from the
from the temple,
and he went the whole way back. I'm assuming like maybe without sleeping, just like I don't know how the horse managed it, but he just went from that place back to Visberg, and he arrived basically at the same time that Orlok did, and he collapses on the floor.
Yeah. He manages to get some words out about how he's coming for her, and he's so glad that he made it in time, but he passes out. At the same time that the guards come into Friedrich's house to tell him that something happened down at the docks, and he's the dock master of the ship harbor, or whatever it's called. When he gets there, he finds a plague ship, or as the people call it, a plague ship. One bunch of rats just swarming into the city, while Canuck is riding upstream with Orlok's coffin. I can't believe that they took that from us, Nathan.
Oh, them carrying his own. Yeah,
I cannot believe they took that from us.
I was looking forward to it so much, and then it's just like, oh.
It does make more sense, I guess.
Yes, yes. I guess it's different times,
fine,
different. You know,
it's not the same though.
Yeah, true. Like DIY.
Yeah. Once they get to Grunewald Manor, they have a discussion. Knock wants to bring the bride here, but Orlok insists that it must be of her own volition, and so he decides to...
He slaps him. I think
Yeah,
so.
I guess. He wants to... He will... well, that's only later that night, I think.
There's a lot of things that are happening at the same time.
Yeah, this part of the movie is kind of chaotic because Helen wants to find Von Franz, and Von Franz is just informed that not only Knock escaped and he cannot interview him, at the same time he's noticing that the bite marks that are on the corpses of the dead.
He realizes that this was no plague.
Yeah.
That he's arrived.
And the corpses also have no blood, which is something interesting.
This is when he name drops the movie, I think.
He's talking to Siverts and Friedrich in his house, while Helen is having nightmares with Orlok.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to mention that this is about the point where Friedrich starts to have enough of it, and he really gets super annoyed at Von Franz, basically seeing that he's enabling this bad behavior from Helen. And the other guys seem to just be on the side of Von Franz, and so Friedrich seems like kind of isolated. He's pushed into a corner, and he's I've had enough of it. Just like, get out. This happens, through intercalated with a bunch of other scenes. So.
Yeah, it's not. I made a mistake. It's not Ellen that Orlok is giving nightmares to. Is to Thomas actually. He let go of me. He makes him dream of him to a point where he's shoving Ellen away, and Ellen goes to sleep with Anne, her friend. While Ellen is still dreaming or sleeping with Anne, this is when he actually comes into the room and reminds her of the promise that she made all those years ago.
The man himself arrives, and he tells her that I'm the one for you. And she's like, no, my heart is with Thomas. And she even says, I loathe you, to his face. And obviously he gets super angry at that. He tells her that she has 3 nights to give herself to him willingly, or else she will see everyone that she ever loved perish,
including the husband who will die by his hand.
Yep. This is already the stakes are a lot more clear than in the original movie. I really like that. And the first victim is Anne, who was sleeping next to her and is now covered in rats.
And the next morning, Friedrich sends both Ellen and Thomas home because he can't handle the state of chaos that is.
It's when he starts completely going just crazy, just going mad at this point. And Ellen and Friedrich actually have, I'm not sure if it's here. I think it's slightly farther.
No, it's here when they have this discussion.
Yeah. And basically she's like, you never listened to me.
You hate me.
Yeah, and they just fall out at this point. It's intense.
While Von Franz is sort of analyzing the room where Knock was, he comes to the conclusion that he sees a lot of weird stuff on the walls. With Sieverts, he goes up to his office, and that's when he finds the shrine dedicated to Orlok. And the journal, the book, he uncovers the Solomonari stuff, which essentially is also different from the original movie. It makes him a powerful sorcerer that essentially sold his soul to the devil, who made him this undead plague carrier, as he described so aptly.
I wonder what that feels like.
I wouldn't know. Yeah, Friedrich has had enough. He sends everybody out and says that by tomorrow morning, he will leave, which coincides with the quarantine. They're closing off Visburg, so this plague isn't going anywhere.
Franz explains the after he name drops NOSFERATU, he explains there's several legends about it and interpretations, but there's always one element of the story that remains consistent, and that is that NOSFERATU has to sleep on the soil that it was buried before the first cockcrow, as they say. And they're like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, I guess we're going to find out.
Ellen and Thomas have this moment in which Thomas comes to realize how little he actually knows about his wife. Because when he reveals to her, well, he's come for you, she's like, you're not giving me any news, brother. I knew this all along. He is my melancholy. He is my depression. Mm-hmm. He is all that I was afraid of, and now we're all gonna die because you sold me out for a bag of gold. Yep. She starts wrecking everything, having convulsions again. He's gonna call the doctor, and she suddenly stops and puts herself in a very suggestive position, drooling and crawling to him, putting his face near his pelvic area. They have a quick sex session in which she is like screaming for Thomas to make him watch, asking him to kiss her heart. And when Thomas sees his wife's face crying blood, essentially, he gets freaked out, and I guess they stop.
Only thing I got from the scene is that Thomas is, he definitely has a fetish for crazy demonically possessed bitches. And I can respect that. That's all I'm saying.
That night, in Frederick's manor, the shadow tells him not to wake up while his wife hears the children screaming and finds, when she opens the door, she finds Orlok drinking blood out of their broken necks.
Yep.
In a scene that is very powerful, I guess. He ends up killing all of the women of the house, and we have a funeral next day. In which
it's tragic.
Ellen says the words,
I would cry, but unfortunately I have no more tears to shed. Something like that, yeah. And it's Frederick in a single night lost his entire family. It is
he's devastated. He's broken. He's screaming that he doesn't want Ellen anywhere near this, that her very presence was an insult to him or whatever.
Yeah, they're completely fallen out at this point. It's just there's nothing healing this.
Thomas does show him the wounds that he has, and he sort of calms himself down. But
all right, because he believes that this was like. Does he believe this was
supernatural? He believes that this was the plague and it was somehow brought by Ellen. He blames her for it all.
Yeah, and finally he's kind of accepting that maybe there was something supernatural about it after he shows the wounds, yeah.
On the way home to Von Franz's, they drop him off and Helen accompanies him to the house.
They're discussing ways to defeat him. Von Franz says they could burn his shrine so he can't sleep in it.
But ultimately, the sacrifice must be hers to make, and she knows this.
Yeah, but this is a so the five of them, or four of them, five.
No, they're five. Yeah,
they're discussing this like openly in the chariot. When they drop Von Franz, he asks to take aside Ellen, and that's when he mentions to her she is the only way. She's her savior. She has to she knows what she has to do.
Yeah, and she knows it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But he does keep this a secret to the others.
And in another time, she could have been a priestess of Isis. But now she must save them all. They can't find Friedrich, who has gone to the mausoleum where his wife and kids are, and he dies in there, embracing his wife.
Yeah, opens the casket and decides to sleep with her one last night.
Forever. They cremate the bodies and move on to Grunewald Manor, where they find an empty tomb. This is when he realizes that Von Franz knew all along what was about to happen.
Yep. He lured him away from Ellen so she could do the thing.
All right, and in the casket, it was Knock. Knock is in there. Yep. Who was supposed to be the Prince of Rats, but he cares only for his precious wife. or bride, whatever he calls her, whatever.
Yeah.
This movie is actually chock full with beautiful quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he Von Franz burns the entire tomb while Thomas rushes to the house, but it's too late because Ellen already invited Orlok in. They are spending the night together, and
She very dramatically. Oh, and we see kind of we have a direct reference to in the original movie of the shadow. Like I think it's the exact same shots in the exact same order, and you see the shadow of the hand kind
moving up the
moving up the stairs and then grabbing the key and then turning the key and opening the door to Ellen, and she accepts finally at the, I think this is the last day that she accepts to take him in and be with him ever eternally.
Yeah, I guess Thomas takes the entire night to reach the house because when he gets there, it's already past the first cock's crow, and Orlok starts to crumble in a way. Blood starts coming out of every orifice. He lets out a horrid scream and dies, embracing Ellen, who actually kind of has a smile on her face because she knows she won.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like her expression of like just stay here, it's okay, as she's grabbing his head as he's like completely just like dissolving. But he doesn't dissolve entirely like in the original movie. He actually, like, his body stays just like on top of her, covered in blood, and she also covered in blood because she has a hole in her chest. So that wound that Thomas had is nothing compared to what he did to poor Ellen, and she dies basically in the moment when Thomas arrives. His last deed is to just close her eyelids.
And lo, the maiden fair did offer her love unto the beast and lay with him in close embrace until the first cock crow. Her willing sacrifice thus broke the curse and freed them from the plague of Nosferatu. The end.
Damn, this is a dense movie, and it's a big. So it's 2 hours, and honestly, this is basically 2 movies kind of smashed together.
You think so?
Yeah, the original Nosferatu is, we can already like go on with the comparisons, I think.
Yeah.
The original is, I think, an hour and a half or an hour 20 or something like that.
It's definitely not as long.
Yeah, it's not as long, but the plot points are basically the same ones. They made a couple alterations here and there, but in general, I would say they kept the core of the story pretty faithful. But they expanded on it. They added a lot more details. Like, I don't think Von Franz was that much of a character in the original.
He kind of shows up in the end, if I'm not mistaken. It's the guy that tells Thomas when he's late, so you can't outrun your destiny. Or can't outrun fate or whatever it is.
Okay. Yeah. But it's like a minor character. Yeah, this movie really expanded on the universe, I guess, of Nosferatu. Well, that's why it's much longer. You know, they added extra scenes.
There's the entire plot about Helen.
Yeah, like the because Helen in the original movie is
just a damsel in distress.
Exactly. She ends up not having much of protagonism, and here she very much is basically the protagonist, and that's why I say it's like 2 movies, because like in like the first half of the movie, Thomas is basically the protagonist. Like, he's the one going to Nosferatu and whatever. And the story is very much about him. And then the second half, the story is about Ellen. And he's kind of just there. Thomas is just like desperately trying to save Ellen and completely unable to do so. Like, he has no idea how hopeless he is. Yeah, it does feel like 2 movies. To me, it feels like 2 movies. Like you could split this into 2 nowadays. I know that obviously it's kind of taboo to do that now, because it's been so overdone. But yeah, like,
I think the biggest difference is, in fact, the reason for Nosferatu to be awake is because of Ellen. I think it's an interesting twist on the story. It puts a lot more emphasis on the female character of the movie. I feel like I've seen a lot of cliches in the movie, kind of like in the original one, but there's also a lot of things that were purposely avoided. For example, you don't see fangs. There's no neck bites.
Yeah, he bites in the chest, which is an interesting variant.
Everything feels so sexual. And I think that's...
the movie is very sexual, obviously, but I think that's actually something that I was going to talk about. you can definitely tell that these two were made in different eras, because obviously, the original Nosferatu, it is the era of, I think, expressionism. So like all you even see like kind of the character designs, like Nosferatu and Nock. They're very they're almost like cartoonish in the way that they're presented, like the shadows around the eyes, and like the way that they hold their hands, and the position, the poses that they make. It's kind of cartoonish, kind of exaggerated, and it's almost kind of funny nowadays when we look back at it. It does, like, in comparison, it does kind of look funny. So obviously the culture has changed, and the movie has changed with it. This in terms of tone, in terms of the execution, it's very different. It's very modern. The movie's very modern in that sense.
But I think it's not just that. I think that the director of the movie went and looked at not Dracula, because let's be honest, Nosferatu originally was just copyright free, or what's it called, legally different from Dracula. And while this one, it tries to, obviously, in 100 years, Nosferatu has become its own thing.
Exactly.
And this is a sort of remake, but looking at vampires, strigoi, in folklore, and not exactly at just Dracula.
Because it is an interpretation, the vampires that we know, the kind of the stereotypical vampire, like the count with with the fangs and the cape and all that. Like that is one specific interpretation of the vampire myth, and it has evolved from previous iterations. And I think they did try to kind of backtrack a little bit and try to inspire themselves, not in the story that inspired directly Nosferatu, but I guess the previous iterations of it. So kind of diverging it a little before. So more of the, I guess, as you call the Vlad the Impaler, basing, you could tell like it's based on the design.
Yeah,
which is an interesting interpretation.
I would have to agree. Originally, I shouldn't really say originally, but we have this idea of vampires being the rich folk that drain people out of their livelihoods by, imposing taxes, and in this case, really drinking the blood out of people without doing anything, because they just exist out of their old money and their estate and their name. To now we're looking at vampires who are draining this Nosferatu feels almost like a psychic vampire.
Yeah, this feels more like it has to do with mental illness, kind of. I think it has barely any political connotation. I think it's a lot more like there's like this shadow inside of you that is consuming you, and that kind of thing. Yeah,
because the way that Ellen talks about it, he's my melancholy. Melancholy is a word for depression back in the times where depression wasn't used.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got a very different twist to it and a very different feel. It's not your typical horror movie either. It's
definitely not. Yeah.
We were mostly
they call it they call it gothic horror
because it is.
It is. Gothic horror usually is more focused on, I guess, the interpersonal, like the relationship between like the darkness and the main character, or things of that nature, mysticism, and romance. Yeah, you can definitely see that here. Like there's very little emphasis, like the jump scares that you have are kind of, they're not really jump scares, they're more like sudden superpositions. It's not really like a creature like jumping at you and like eating you or anything. There's also very little like body horror. So yeah, it's a lot more introspective, and I like that.
Yeah, it was different enough from the original movie that warranted its own episode too. I think so. Even though people will never get to hear our old tapes.
Eldritch, we have.
No, do not mention it. Do not mention it.
Okay. Hey, I'm just saying, like, I still believe it's possible. I still believe it's possible, but okay.
That gonna come back bite us in the ass.
We can dream.
Another thing that you particularly noticed is how the tones that were used in the original movie are also kind of represented here. How do I explain this for the people that haven't watched the original Nosferatu? Being a very old movie and being an expressionist movie, the way that they portray night and day is hilarious. The movie is shot always during the day, but because there's no budget to make lighting at night, or
They just create a filter on it. Yeah, they just make it blue.
They just paint the film blue or sepia or orange, depending on the time of day. And there are plenty of shots in the movie where that sort of happens. The movie goes very monochrome.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Yeah, for some scenes, particularly at night, whenever the Count is present. But also more in von Frenz's house, and during the night, at Frederick's house, the tones are very, very sepia. I don't know how to explain this. Like it feels like it's a nod.
They definitely do the color grading to be focus a lot on sepias and these kind of pale blues. For not necessarily night and day. I mean, also that, but also for like most of the scenes, I think, are in those tones in general.
Which was interesting indeed. Because talking about interesting, I also thought that the deliveries of the actors are very theatrical. They're very over dramatic, very emphatic, very especially Knock.
But Knock is supposed to be a kind of crazy in general. So I think
but the way he moves his arms to express his feelings, and the way he uses his words, and he picks them very carefully and deliberately, and
they do make it quite I didn't notice that, but that's true. They keep the same kind of aesthetic of the slightly more emphasis on
expression, I guess.
Yeah. That's true.
Even in
like, it doesn't feel out of place at all. It's interesting because it is a modern movie.
That were connected to Orlok especially have this particular thing, I guess, because Ellen, or Lily Rose Depp, she also acts the same way. She has whenever she's having these seizures, and her facial expressions contort to crazy things, like she's legitimately being possessed. And I felt that was very interesting too, like in the way that we're approaching this. We're trying to make a modern gothic expressionist movie, and it came out okay, I guess.
We can ask which one's better.
I feel like we'll always have a very special place in our hearts for a Symphony of Horror.
Definitely.
For many, many years, it was our favorite horror movie.
I mean, to be honest, there weren't a lot back then.
That's true. And it's hard to express, curiously enough, it's hard to express how influential in modern directors Nosferatu actually is.
Indeed.
And how this movie that was actually almost destroyed.
Oh, yeah, it almost became lost media. It's actually quite an interesting story because of copyright issues, and
if it weren't for a certain group of people, this movie wouldn't have ever seen the light of day again.
I wonder who it was. But yeah, it is.
Let's not brag, shall we?
Yeah. It is quite interesting, the context. I mean, at least to me, obviously this isn't interesting to everyone. So the movies, both movies, supposedly are set in 1838, around that time.
Oh God, and I know what's coming.
I don't know if you want to get into the politics of it.
Let's go.
Because at the time, so Germany didn't exist back then, because Germany was only founded in the 1870s. So at the time, what you had was the German Federation, which was the successor to the Holy Roman Empire. wasn't a country necessarily. And Transylvania specifically was part of the Hungarian portion of the Austrian Empire. And so I just think it is interesting the choice of putting it in Germany at this time. I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, politically, having Austria own Transylvania makes for easy trade and easy, just, you know, the whole logistics of it. Him going to Transylvania, like, physically, which means he doesn't have to cross any borders necessarily to do that. Of course, there's the problem of how does Nosferatu go by boat? That's a problem that
Well, for 100 years we've been debating why would you use the boat, right?
yeah.
And the only go on.
In my interpretation, I think what makes the most sense is that he's actually going by boat via the Danube River.
Well,
I think it makes more sense.
That's all fine and all, but my my biggest point of contention is that he goes by boat simply because this was supposed to be an adaptation from Dracula, where he goes to England.
Okay,
and he needs to go by boat.
True. Maybe, I mean, okay, we could say that it is easier to transport coffins, multiple coffins by boat as opposed to by chariot. It's more convenient, I guess. And it's not like he has any rush necessarily, if you think about it. I noticed an interesting detail. The men on the ship, I'm pretty sure, are speaking Russian.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Makes sense, you know, Black Sea, Transylvania, not directly connected unless you include the Danube to the Black Sea. So I don't know if they're trying to do the whole going all the way around Europe, because I think that's ridiculous. No.
Probably. Because there's shots of him in an ocean or in a sea at least. That's no river. No river is that wide that you can't see margins left or right. And he wrecks the coast. Like the boat crashes into the docks.
True.
He went around.
That doesn't make sense to me.
The only reason is that in the, like, to me anyway, after a century of debating this, is that he was supposed to go to England and they kept it like that.
Yeah, I guess
there was no way for Thomas to outpace him any other way.
I mean, if he stayed in that church for a long time, because I have no idea how long it would actually take for you to sail around Europe, like from Romania to Germany.
And also, you can't, at least during this time, you could not get raided in a boat. And if someone was to destroy the carriage or something, he would probably be in a very vulnerable position.
You're right.
At least with the boat, he could kind of autopilot, I guess.
I mean, the boat could sink, though. Like, it'd just be a storm and sink the boat. So
he can control the weather.
And that's true. Forget about that. He can't control raiders necessarily. Also, it is crazy that because he has to make stops. If he goes around Europe, he has to cross both Turkish straits. He has to cross the Gibraltar Strait, and he has to cross the English Channel. And it is insane to me how in none of these stops. So the plague managed to make it all the way through those stops and not be intercepted at all. And only when it arrives at Vesburg, which would imply that it is a coastal city, which means it is all the way, makes it even more crazy, because then that means that Thomas has to go from the northern coast of Germany all the way to Transylvania by horse, which, it's a little more, it's like more than double the duration that I was thinking.
It's definitely a case of
I'm gonna say
you just in England, and
in my heart it's the Danube River. He's going up the Danube River. It just makes more sense.
And then cannot. It's not possible.
God damn it! The only explanation that makes sense to me. Maybe in this alternate, because it is, Vesburg doesn't exist. So maybe it's an alternate
first metropolis in the world.
No, I was thinking like maybe this is an alternate world in which the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea for some reason connect, and they're like way closer.
Oh,
or maybe Transylvania is in a different location. Maybe Transylvania is in Poland. That would make more sense.
No, they mentioned the Alps, the Carpathian Alps. So
Yeah, but that's on the other side. That's between like Transylvania and the rest of Romania. So and like Russia, like I don't know.
I guess audiences weren't thinking about this 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's not very accurate like geographically, but I mean whatever. That's not really
It's
the point of it.
interesting that Eggers decided to keep it in this one. Stay true to
Mhm.
it after all. Anyway,
I mean, a vampire in a boat is interesting, I guess.
I guess so. There isn't really anything else because we already analyzed the original one a long time ago.
Yeah, we're not going to do that again.
And
Probably.
I feel like the vampire thing is beaten to death nowadays, beaten back to
True.
one life, maybe.
True.
But this movie was different enough that it warrants some kind of not even just for being extremely nostalgic to us, but it's different enough that it warrants a revisit.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10 for the nostalgia factor.
10 rats out of 10 nosfers.
What?
10 nosfers out of 10 ratus.
Right, the candles are out, the circles have been erased, and we will let silence reign again. The Grymm Mansion is closing its gates. Have a horrible night, and until we meet again, drink your milk.